Greetings. This is Celebration. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today we'll continue with our recent series, The Jews and Their Culture. Now, briefly, for those who are unfamiliar with Celebration, this is a program which looks at peoples and their cultures and tries to ascertain a little bit more to help round out the picture. We do understand that most people have a general idea of the various peoples and cultures, and we think that probably to a certain extent, generally speaking, a correct viewpoint, though I think that it is probably a slanted viewpoint. We try to fill in the gaps to provide a more rounded picture, and in the process use standard references as well as out-of-print materials, little-known books, and so forth. Whatever we think will be healthful and credible in presenting the image we think this particular peoples and cultures deserve to fully present it. Now, we are probably the only proponent of purity versus impurity in America. We approve of the unadulterated, while most people are of the sort who inveigh against people who do so, apparently preferring the adulterated to the unadulterated. Well, to each his own, as they say. But we do believe and have expressed the opinion that there should be a place on the earth for all types, and let each gather into that spot and live happily and continually. But there is a strange movement afoot, it seems to me, to extinguish all ideas that are not incorrect and with false doctrine. So we do have that, and we try to fend it off as best we can, but the opposition is great and small. And I just had an experience of the small when I found out that the program which I'm doing right now, I would have to redo because somebody has pushed a button that stopped the recording of the program. So you do meet into all kinds of problems in this. There are so many people who are against truth. It just amazes me, fact, law, and truth. What hostility, wow. But at any rate, we have been talking about Jewry in terms of certain great ideas found therein. Mostly we have talked about the Talmud and the Kabbalah, especially the Kabbalah of late. We will kind of continue this approach. And in today's program, we will have a certain slant toward what might be called the Messiah, the concept of the Messiah. So let's do that now. The concept of Messiah in Judaism is a very difficult and obscure one. It is a topic that piques interest in almost every religious community, and the Jewish community has traditionally been no different in its fascination and curiosity in trying to understand the Jewish concept of Messiah. Numerous questions arise regarding the Messiah. Who will he be? What will make him so special? What will be the signs of his coming? How will the world change once he arrives? These questions and others will be discussed in analyzing the uniquely Jewish perspective on these issues relating to the Messiah. In discussing the general concept of the Jewish Messiah, Maimonides notes that the true ideas of Messiah are hidden from us, and we cannot know the precise order of events at that time, the end of days, until they actually occur. Maimonides continues and says that the prophets themselves spoke in very obscure terms about the coming of the Messiah, in part because the details are not that clear in the Jewish tradition. In fact, according to Maimonides, the rabbis and teachers have no specific tradition that was passed down from generation to generation regarding the specifics of Messiah. And therefore, they used the allusion in the scripture to formulate a general idea on this topic. It is for this reason that there is much disagreement about the details surrounding the Jewish Messiah. Maimonides continues and warns Jews precisely for these reasons not to spend too much time analyzing the midrashim that speaks about the Messiah. Now, this is a citation from Nachum Amsel, the Jewish Encyclopedia of Moral and Ethical Issues, page 166. But unfortunately, this does not seem to stop people. But let's see if we can learn a little bit more as a kind of a foundation for this subject. If it is true that the concept of Messiah is so basic to Judaism, then why is there no specific mention of Messiah in the Torah? The 5 books of Moses. Some have used the lack of reference to Messiah in the Torah as a proof that the messianic concept came much later in Jewish history, or that it is not truly a basic Jewish concept. These explanations are far from the truth, as the lack of direct mention of Messiah in the Torah has been explained along with the general lack of spiritual rewards and references in the Torah. Although clearly part of basic Judaism, the spiritual aspects of Judaism and the spiritual rewards for mitzvah actions are not mentioned at all. Why? It has been explained that the Torah mentions only concepts that the entire people could relate to. In selecting the lowest common denominator, the Torah speaks to all the people and delineates those ideas and rewards that everyone can grasp. Thus, it is the riches of much food that is promised as a reward for mitzvot in the Shema prayer, and not any spiritual promises, although these rewards would clearly come as well. Ideas beyond the comprehension of some Jews, such as spirituality and the world to come, are not mentioned, although they are clearly an important part of Jewish belief. Therefore, the idea of Messiah, who would come one day far in the future, was also not mentioned in the Torah itself. The prophets, on the other hand, spelled out these notions more concretely. Hence, the idea of Messiah was not mentioned openly, but was merely alluded to in the Torah. This is a citation, again, from Nachum Amsel, the Jewish Encyclopedia of Moral and Ethical Issues, page 167. Now, I believe that this citation further underlines the tendency toward elitism in Jewry, and I think in almost all religions. There's always a notion by very smart people, perhaps from having dealings with ordinary people, that ordinary people can't possibly perceive what they perceive. The notation by Karl Marx, for instance, in regard to the mass of Jewry, massy Jewry, is one of material interest and an interest in money. Now, most of these people were undoubtedly not well off. I will say probably close to poor. And that being the case, a day-by-day need for material things must have been a big factor, and therefore thoughts of money to obtain them must also have been big. There could not have been that much luxury to sit around and dwell upon the big ideas and so forth, even if they had some ability at it. There are needs that have to take priority in life, that is to keep body and soul together, so to speak. But we do also note that in the mystery religions and in most secret society types of organizations, there are degrees, and those degrees typically are degrees of consciousness. And although perhaps many types of people would be welcome into an organization of this type, if for nothing else, then as a presentable face, as it were, to present to the world a kind of a window dressing. But therefore, their perception of the organization in which they dwell is not one that it requires loftiness, as it were. They can just accept the lowest denominated level of knowledge. That's sufficient. But those who can go higher are allowed to do so, and this is strictly based, I believe, on ability to perceive, consciousness of where they are and what it's all about. Now, at the very top, you have people who I think perceive themselves as great and gifted individuals, what might be called tzaddikim. We'll get into this subject from the point of view of the Hasidic Jews in just a little bit, but you will be able to see that this could lead to abuse, and any time that you have some people who perceive themselves as far more perceptive than the mass of people, you also may have a tendency to have a destructive ego, one that begins to abuse other people, one that leads the others astray. And this has happened a number of times, for instance, within Jewry with false messiahs. But let's go on, noting as we do that for some observers, such as certain Arabs, Jewry has been perceived as a secret society and therefore would have the characteristic structure of a secret society, that is a broad base and a narrow top. But let's go forward and learn a little bit more about this. Although the Talmud is filled with specific mathematical predictions outlining the timing of the arrival of Messiah, Rabbi Samuel ben Nakunya cursed all those who predicted the timing of his arrival. After the Talmud was completed, Jews in all generations continued to try to predict the precise moment of the coming of the Messiah. Today, this practice continues unabated. Nevertheless, in his code of Jewish law, the Mishnah Torah, Maimonides forbids this practice and curses anyone who attempts to predict the moment of Messiah's arrival. Why do Rabbi Samuel and later Maimonides forbid and vehemently curse this practice of prediction? Rabbi Samuel answers this question himself when he says that if a particular messianic prediction will not come true, then Jews who believed in this prediction will abandon the idea of a Jewish Messiah and perhaps even Judaism itself. Thus, the danger of possibly making a mistake can have dire consequences. Long after the Talmud records this reason, Jewish history has shown this to be true numerous times. The most famous of these false predictions and false messiahs in Jewish history is Sabbatai Zivi, based on the verse about Aaron coming the temple. The prediction was made that the priest, Sabbatai was a Cohen, would come to the temple in Zot, which means with this, but has a numerical value of 408. Thus, in the Hebrew year 5408, 1648 CE, the priest would come to the temple. Unfortunately, many European Jews did not heed the words of Rabbi Samuel and Maimonides and faithfully believed this prediction. When Sabbatai turned out to be a false messiah, thousands of Jews abandoned Judaism. This is a citation again from Nachum Amsel, the Jewish Encyclopedia of Moral and Ethical Issues, pages 167, 168. Well, this particular citation calls to mind, actually, for me, some of the contemporary Christian ministers who also seem to be trying to precisely predict the return of the Messiah, Christ, naming years and months and so forth. And the arrogance in this particular area is astonishing. However, bearing in mind what was stated in the citation apropos of Jewry, I think that the same actually applies here for Christians. It would seem to me that there may be a great loss of faith in Christianity amongst those congregations of Christians who are led by ministers predicting unwisely, rashly, the exact year and month and so forth of the return of Christ. When it doesn't happen, and it won't, there will be certainly a loss of faith for some and perhaps turning away from Christianity. But also, this warning, of course, is the warning that rabbis Samuel and Maimonides made apropos of Jewry. But it still has relevance, I think, to Christians who look upon the same scripture or similar areas or scriptural lines. And it may be inevitable because, according to the scripture, there has to be a great falling away of faith before the actual return. And I can't think of too much which would be better calculated to cause a loss of faith in this sort of unwise behavior. That and the indoctrination of students in suspicious science, kind of giving a 1-2 punch, as it were, to faith. But a well-founded faith will survive. But I do think that there is this kind of continuity in regard to messianic perception from this citation we have given into even contemporary Christian views. But let's go forward, because I want to actually talk about the Hasidic approach to this particular subject of Messiah. So let's do that. Despite all good attempts by the Council of the Four Lands to help communities and institutions, the plight of most Jews in Eastern Europe through the 1700s was almost unbearable. People had nothing. Many families couldn't afford to feed their children, so they sent the oldest boys to yeshivot, a plural of yeshiva, where they had to fend for themselves. The yeshivot helped the boys establish meal days with families in the community. Each boy would try to get as many such meal days as he could. They were his only source of food. Families with eligible daughters would try to provide a meal day for the best students in the hope that one of the boys would eventually marry into the family, thereby bringing them honor. Talmud knowledge was to them the highest value and the most praiseworthy attribute in the divine order of the universe. The vast majority of people were illiterate and ignorant and felt hopeless. Many people turned to practical kabbalah, magic, and superstition to provide some order in their lives. Miracle workers moved from community to community, healing and providing amulets against the evil eye. They were called upon to exorcise dybbuks, wicked transmigrating souls which had entered emotionally disturbed people. These practical Kabbalists, frowned upon by the rabbis, were called Baalei Shem, masters of the name. They used the power from the divine name of God to influence the world, producing magic. Now this is a citation from Rabbi David E. Kahn Lippmann, The Book of Jewish Knowledge, number 427 on page 246. Well, it is under just such circumstances, I believe, that people are most vulnerable to the false messiahs as well as just con men in general. If a person should appear on the scene who seems like a great man, what we might consider today to be a charismatic figure, someone who looked the part, someone who had a kind of a correct or a natural pose about him that helped engender this image, someone who perhaps had a little knowledge of the esoteric joined with a lot of practical psychological insights into people, as well as perhaps a certain induced delusion as regard to their own position in the world. These kinds of things could lead, I think, fairly easily to a movement, a cult movement, a false messiah movement. Into this situation came Israel ben Eliezer from Moldavia. It is impossible to separate fact from fiction about him personally. However, he definitely had a gentle, special persona which attracted and impressed people. Although he didn't write anything himself, his followers did, and ideas credited to him changed Judaism drastically. His followers called themselves Hasidim, pious ones. Their movement was called Hasidut, the Hasidic movement. Using the vocabulary of practical Kabbalah, Israel ben Eliezer emphasized that every Jew can get in touch with the divine through kavana, focus and joy, by viewing the world with wonder. By offering one's soul to God, an ignorant Jew could get closer to the divine than could a coldly logical Talmudic scholar. This was a revolutionary idea, and it appealed to the common people for obvious reasons. The people credited Israel ben Eliezer with miraculous capacities. He was called a Baalei Shem, a master of the name. However, because of his gentle soul and his effect on people, he was called the Baalei Shem Tov, the good master of the name, frequently mistranslated the master of the good name. Taking the first letters of Baalei Shem Tov, B-S-H-T, they called him by the acronym Besht. This is a citation from Rabbi David E. Kahn Lippmann, The Book of Jewish Knowledge. Basic Facts 427, 428, appearing on pages 246, 247. Now, without knowing anything in addition to this about Israel ben Eliezer, I will say that the qualities, the citation associates in my mind somewhat with the personality attributed to Francis of Assisi. I recall reading a citation in Mr. John Daniel's Scarlet and the Beast in regard to Lenin, the head of the USSR, who had said that on his deathbed is said to have said something along the lines that there was regret about the sea of blood which had been shed, and that had he had 10 men of the character of Francis of Assisi, he might have been more successful and all the bloodshed not needed. Hasidic Jews believed that their leader was a tzaddik, a holy, righteous man. Originally, Jews followed the Besht because of his special personality. They also followed his disciples because of their personalities. This element of personality cult was integrated into the Hasidic movement. According to the Talmud, in every generation there are 36 holy, righteous Jews, tzaddikim, plural of tzaddik. The followers of the Besht understood a tzaddik to be someone who is not afflicted with a normal human shell around his soul. These 36 tzaddikim, called Lamed Vavnik, are capable of complete unity with the divine while still alive. Hasidic Jews believe that each of their leaders is one of those 36 holy, righteous men. It's a citation from the Book of Jewish Knowledge, 9 on page 247. Well, that's it, folks.